All right, everybody. Good evening. It is Tuesday. It is a little after 7 o'clock Central, so it's time for another weekly episode of Conversations with Commodores, and we have a true legend with us this evening. He patrolled the defensive backfield for 3 years for the Commodores, All-America, All-SEC, and I'm number 8 overall draft pick in 1984. Of course, guys, I've got Leonard Coleman as my guest tonight. Good evening, Leonard.
Thank you. Good evening to you.
And we've already got Mark Matlock is in the house, and there'll be some more who will be rolling through. Hopefully a bunch of your teammates will be coming through and giving you some shout outs. But Leonard, as I do each week on these conversations, I'm trying to share the individual journeys and stories that make up your experience at Vanderbilt, just like mine was different than yours was different than Taylor Stokes. It was different than Carl Parker's, et cetera. But we do have a lot of common experiences. McGugin, the crappy stadium, Carmichael Towers, all of that good stuff. So, Leonard, I want to start, if it's okay with you, I want to start Boynton Beach, Florida. What was it like growing up in Boynton Beach, and what all sports got your interest as a youngster?
Well, Boynton was a city in itself, a neighborhood, bunch of older people. I was raised with my grandparents, so I was always around older people that you're going to do what they told you to do. Well, there's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. You did exactly what they told you to do. If not, you got your butt whooped. You got to whoop sometime for doing the right thing.
Yeah. Did you play a bunch of sports growing up?
I played baseball, basketball, and tried street hockey one time, but that didn't work out too well. And baseball probably was my favorite sport because it was my grandfather's sport. Mm-hmm. And fortunately, he passed a while ago, a long time ago. But we played everything, any kind of game you can name, we probably played in Boynton Beach, something we shouldn't have been playing.
What about that? Some of your buddies, did you have some athletes that you grew up and competed against?
Some world-class athletes. There's a guy 2 houses down across the street. My best friend's brother, Jordan Kirby, was a world-class trainer. Just didn't do anything in the classroom, just didn't work. But it was athletes. I was probably on a list of 1 to 10. I was probably 12 or 13 on that list in my neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. And it probably made you a better athlete as a result of competing.
Absolutely. I played with older guys. I didn't play with anybody my age until high school and things like that. And they made you compete.
Well, we when we come up through the ranks, ultimately when people are starting to notice our athleticism and our accolades and our accomplishments, we become basically big fish in little ponds in your high school setting. So before we get to that part of your journey, what was it about football that allowed you to either excel at it or just it was the sport that you ultimately chose for your college career?
Well, football is a simple game. Just it's a little bit different now because I'm not sure if these guys are tougher now than we were years ago because, you got a headache, you were called soft. So the concussion thing, it's real. And it's just a simple game, it's 10 yards for first down. Tackling is tackling, catching is catching, running is running. It's a simple game. And that's what I liked about that game.
Did you play on both sides of the ball or was it mainly on defense?
Yes. Matter of fact, one of the reasons I went to Vanderbilt, because that was one of the few schools that told me I wasn't going to be a running back. And running back's a dime a dozen. I tore my shoulder up in high school, and to this day, it still bothers me. So going there and playing defense was what I wanted to do, not run the ball. Running the ball, get all the accolades and stuff like that, but short term, real short term.
Well, you had some forethought. That's exactly right. Oh, we got Jim Arnold in the house. We got Russell Nicole in the house. Thank you, gentlemen. We've got Leonard Coleman, of course, as our guest tonight. Leonard, when was it that you found from high school in those years, whether it was 8th, 9th, 10th, whatever year it began, when did you start seeing some success on the field that continued or built more and more confidence in your abilities on the field?
Probably my 10th grade year. And my city where I live at, we went to junior high school in the next town. Most of the kids in the surrounding neighborhoods, they went to middle school. So they were in high school in 9th grade. I got to high school in 10th grade. I didn't know anything about varsity two-a-days in the summertime. So I show up, I think the first week of school, they've been already out there practice for 2 weeks. And the JV coach went out with JV and he told me, you can't play with us, you got to go up. So this was probably a Monday or Tuesday. I got moved up to varsity that Wednesday, and my coach told me, you're gonna be defensive end, look at your feet, you're gonna be big. I said, no, coach, I'm a defensive back. So I snuck over with the DBs. This was Wednesday, and Friday night I was starting at free safety, and the next week I was starting at free safety and tight end, like a week of practice. I'm like, this game's not that hard. It's not that hard.
It's not that hard for folks like you who had the skill set to be able to perform. But I know that you didn't just rely on your given gifts. I know that you worked hard. I know that you perfected your craft. Was defensive back where you really wanted to make your mark, or did you care where you were on the field?
No, I always looked at myself as a defensive back. Why? I don't know. I guess playing street ball, sandlot, the guy in the deep end always made all the plays. You can get by the lineman or the backers, but now you got to get by us back here. So it's just different.
Well, we're talking 77, 78, 79 as you're coming up through the high school ranks. Who, if anyone, were your, I guess, not idols, but who did you really like and maybe try to pattern your game after? Any of the local guys or college or pros that really stuck out to you back then?
Probably local guys, because before I played with older guys growing up. And I looked up a lot of those guys, and I still do to this day. So I would say local guys. The pro game and the college game in Palm Beach County, Boynton, wasn't that big back then. The Dolphins were an hour away. The Hurricanes were an hour away, but they weren't that good those years. They got better.
I was going to say Schallenbecker hadn't really turned the Hurricanes around just yet, if I remember correctly.
No, they hadn't. They got good, I think, maybe my second or third year at Vanderbilt.
Yeah, but I think maybe by then was maybe Jim Kelly had come through there, maybe Kozar. I can't remember the order, but I know that up until then, they were just kind of a middle of the pack program.
Yes, they were. Very, very.
And I know Coach Shula with the Dolphins found a lot of success in the early 70s, but it wasn't until Marino, I guess, got there later on.
He was a player. I thought he was overrated. When I finally got the NFL with the end zone shot, he wasn't close to me overrated. He's the best I've seen. I don't care about Super Bowl. He was the best I've seen.
Well, he had such a quick release when he made a decision.
Yes, he did.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I could talk about Marino because he was one of my sports heroes, being a few years older than me. That was one of the posters I had as a kid was him. But Leonard, let's get to the point where you're getting up in high school. You're starting to be recognized, and colleges are starting to come find you. What was it like as part of the recruiting experience, and when did Vanderbilt fit into that?
Coach Dave Roberts, he was my recruiter. Actually, he recruited my nephew to Notre Dame and tried to recruit another nephew to go to South Carolina. He was a great recruiter. Convinced me Vanderbilt was the place for me. I thought it was, chance to play defense, not offense. Just going up there, and it was snow on the ground. I think that sold me too. And Nashville wasn't a big city back then, and I'm a fan of small cities. I live in a small city right now. It was just, you have to have. That's where I wanted to be back then.
Isn't it funny that your assessment back in 82 or 81, 82 time period is that Nashville was still a small town? My gosh, it isn't anymore. But
too big.
Well, even when I got there in the fall of 86, just a few years after you, it was still a relatively small town. And I think in the preceding decades, obviously, we got speaking of a heavy hitter, we got Kenny Cole in the house. Hey,
Oh,
Kenny,
yes,
thanks for
Kenny.
joining us.
I'm in Alabama now, Kenny.
That's right. Kenny, we need to get together with Leonard sometime, break some bread, maybe find Hammond when he isn't traveling the world. But Leonard, what other schools were you seriously considering, if others?
Florida State, Florida, not really. And I really wanted to go to Cincinnati. They had my high school quarterback, Danny Barry. Danny's coaching with the Houston Texans right now.
Mm-hmm.
And probably Brown. I got a cousin there, but just couldn't afford tuition at Brown back then.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Ivy League didn't give scholarships.
Yeah. Did you visit any of these other schools?
I visited Florida State and Cincinnati and a couple of other schools, but just they didn't feel right. And I went up to visit Florida State. Bobby Butler, guy from Delray, 5 miles away from my hometown. He was my, I guess, host. And I said, "Hey man, I'm ready to get back to Boynton. This isn't the place for me."
Wow.
They were undefeated that year. You're talking about a good team, but I've never been cocky. Tried to stay quiet. I'm like, it's not where I need to be. But they were darn good.
Oh, they were super good at that point. Coach Bowden had them peaking. But that's interesting. You didn't want to stay in state, and ultimately you said, well, what was it about the snow? Why snow was a positive, not a negative for a Florida guy?
I never really seen it. And you see that, I'm like, wow. I got back home, like, you guys should have seen this. None of my friends had really seen snow. We had snow in the 9th grade, and it wasn't like thirds, I don't know, but you couldn't get enough to fill your hand.
Right.
About seeing that stuff on the ground.
Oh, that's too good. Now, fast forward, did you ever get used to the snow, or did it become cumbersome and a pain for you?
It was fine as long as I didn't have to drive in it. When it snows, you walk around Vanderbilt campus. I didn't have a car.
Yeah.
Well, I was driving it. I could sit up in the dorm room and just watch accidents after accident. Anytime it rained, real good at Nashville, or it snowed, sit there and watch it. It was entertaining.
Oh my gosh, anytime it snowed, you could just look out west End and just wait. There'll be one coming anytime now. But you're so right about that. Leonard, when you went up to campus, and besides the snow, do you remember who your recruiting host or anything that you did that really just kind of not just resonated with you, but it just was more comfortable, and this kind of sealed your decision?
Well, I'm not even sure who my host was, but I just say it was relaxing. It was no pressure, and meeting Coach Mack and some of the other coaches, it just felt like the place I needed and wanted to be.
Were there any Florida guys already on the roster?
There were a couple. Diamond Jim, Alama, Charles Edwards. There was probably, I'm going to say 7 or 8.
Well, for most of the folks who come on the show, when they make that decision and then they sign that grant, that intent letter, they're coming to Vanderbilt, it takes some weight off of them, and you're able to they say that you relax a little bit. Did you find that to be of any relief? Was it any stress to you trying to make a decision, or you just knew that's what I'm going to do? This is just one more thing before I get up to campus.
I pretty much knew after the visit. I think I took 2 more visits after that. It was that I just took those because I met some real good coaches that were recruiters, and it's kind of hard to tell those guys. You build a relationship with them. It's hard to say no.
Well, what about if you don't mind me asking, the dynamics with your grandparents about the decision-making process? They're one more generation removed. And I don't know if your grandparents attended college or not, but it was, I'm sure, a very different experience for everybody in the family.
Well, absolutely. My grandfather pretty much said, look, it's up to you. I've raised you for 18 years, and I trust what you're going to do. So you just make sure that they're telling you the truth. And I had one guy came in and straight up lied. I said, look, Granddad is out here right now being at 5, but you got to leave. He said, you guys can't come here and lie to me in his house. If you do, you got to go. He was a man of principles, not much education. He was the smartest man that I ever knew. And he put it in my hands. He trusted But he did with me, raise me. He trusted that part.
Well, I was going to say you probably earned that trust just over the years.
You earned it or he got beat into you, didn't
Yeah.
that
Either
man
way.
never whooped me. Now my grandmother was a whooper.
Uh-huh.
And if I did something wrong, he's gonna have a conversation one time only. So I made sure I didn't do it a second time.
Mhm.
I did not want to disappoint that man.
Well, if I say that our next person who's watching is nicknamed Pooh, who are we talking about?
Only one Pooh I knew, but I doubt if it's no, I knew a punk, and I'm not sure who Pooh is.
We got Ed Parrish in the house.
I don't. Ed was before my time. I think I might have.
Ed was in, yeah, Ed was in the 70s, but I didn't know if your paths had ever crossed. Leonard, you get up to campus and we talk about being the big fish in little pond coming out of Boynton, but we all then revert to really kind of being little fish in the big pond now that you're in the college level. And no matter what, well, I shouldn't say it this way, even the most accomplished guys coming out of high school, the highest rated, the biggest press, they still have to compete for their job. And it's that way at Vanderbilt, it's that way at state schools, et cetera. What did you find from a transition standpoint, athletically, was the most difficult for you? If there was anything that was difficult, I know you played very early, but you still had to earn your position. What was it? Was it speed? Was it accuracy of passes that you had to deflect or defend? Can you kind of describe it?
Well, I think my coaches growing up in Little League ball and my high school coaches got me prepared for the next level. I was in junior high school. We had two coaches, the head coach and assistant coach. And we were running coverages in 8th, 9th grade that we ran in high school and ran in the NFL and college. I think that's what really got me ready. Because, I went in at 6'2", 6'3". And I could run with most receivers. Could run with some of those guys, but it wasn't a hard transition. And the guys at Vanderbilt, they made it easy. Ken Hammond and those guys, upperclassmen, they didn't hate you. They treated you well, I think. I don't think I got hazed anything like that, but a bunch of good guys. We had true leaders, and you went out and you play ball.
Well, who was your position coach when you got to Vanderbilt?
When I first got there, Coach Ron McCrum. And some stories about Coach.
Well, we're all ears. Whatever you want to tell about that, Coach.
Some of the stuff the coach used to say, I can't repeat, and I'm not a cusser, but he got me ready. He used to get in my behind, and one day he's just cussing my coach. I don't understand. I said, I've been on you for a week, and you cussed me like there's no tomorrow. I'm like, why are you cussing at me? So my grandfather's never cussed at me, and he raised me. He said, well, you're loafing, son. I said, really? When am I loafing? He said, well, we're doing our sprints, you're loafing. I said, Coach, DBs, receivers, and running backs run together. Where am I at, as far as first, second, third, or fourth? He said, well, you're always out front, first, second, or third. He said, but it just doesn't look like you're running. So that day he called my grandfather. They talked once a week for probably the next 4 or 5 years, even after Coach McCollum left Vanderbilt.
There is that rare athlete, and I'm putting you in this category, that when you're being athletic, it does not look like it's stressful. Case in point, one example from my childhood is Ken Griffey Jr. He was accused of always loafing, not caring, not trying. He wore his hat backwards. He was a different generation. And I suspect, obviously I wasn't there, but I suspect that you were put in that category, that your ease of athleticism is what I call it, was different to that coach. And he did not recognize that at the time, but I bet your grandfather set him straight.
Oh, he did. Grandfather was a man's man, but after that, me and Coach McCrone, he died a few years back, but love that guy. Loved it.
Leonard, there are some athletes who respond to the screaming and the yelling and the just getting on, being gotten on and just driven hard. And then there are other athletes who just completely tune it out because that just is not the way that they respond. And it doesn't seem, and only talking to you for 10 minutes, 15 minutes now, I don't see you being in the category that if you're going to yell at me all day, if you're going to just continue to berate me, you're not going to get the best version out of me. Is that a fair comment?
Yes, it is. And you know, my thing is, you know, you're taught in life to treat everybody the same. No, you know, you treat everybody different. You know, I've had, you know, everybody has wants and needs. Some guys you can scream and kick them in the butt. There are other guys you scream at, they totally back off. I guess you have to know your athletes to know your people. Because, you know, we all have kids. I'm not sure if you have kids, but you say you want to raise them the same, you can't. Everybody has certain wants and needs. And everybody wants to be born.
Well, you're so right. You can't treat them like cookie cutters. They're not. No. They may have similar DNA, but they are not the same child as the other one. But
no, they're not.
Leonard, with all the different coaches that you had, and I'll start with your grandfather respectfully and take it into junior high and high school and all the way up into the pros. I'm sure you had all kind of personalities that were your specific coaches. Mm-hmm. Did you have to have similar conversations that you had with your first Vanderbilt coach, position coach, with any other coaches to be able to get on the same page with them?
Coach Ben Valkenburg, who came in after Coach McCrone, we had those conversations. He was another guy that I love. He treated you with respect. He would work the crap out of you. You hate him sometimes because he worked you so hard, but you respected him because he was trying to get you to a certain level, a certain point. Now, some coaches I had later in life, NFL, just nothing. They didn't teach. They just the defense, his offense, go work.
Mm-hmm. Did you get more? It really sounded like you got a great foundation in junior high and high school, and that carried on into the Vanderbilt years. But then by the time you got into the pros, maybe they expect you or assume you already have all the coaching that you need. Now you're just putting in the defenses or the schemes.
And some guys were like that, but you know, it's all about technique and fundamentals. It all comes back to that. That's what makes the game so easy.
Well, I've heard for those athletes, and I'm certainly not in this category, for the athletes where the game comes easy, it's really about two things. It's slowing your heart rate down so you can process more quickly the moment, and then the earliest recognition of what you need to do when you need to do it. And I'm not describing that the right way. I know there are better terms for that, but I guess I want to try for you to explain, if you can, some of your mindset when you're out there and you're calling the defense or you're putting your guys in the right place. Obviously, you've done your homework during the week, but it's not just recognizing certain offensive schemes. Mm-hmm. There's that athleticism where you're not thinking, you're just doing. Can you give any description to how it is that made the game come easy or easier to you than others?
I guess that's when practice, film work, and just breaking everything down when it all comes together. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. You know, some games you see everything before it happens. Other games you don't see it. It's over. It depends on your mindset, I guess.
Well, I want to take you to November 22nd, 1980. Chattanooga. That'd be Chattanooga, your freshman year.
Oh, yes.
I think that's a pretty memorable game for you, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, how is it that you were in the right place at the right time 3 different times for 3 interceptions in the game?
I don't remember much about that day. I really don't. I just remember, I think, was that the game Mark busted one of the receivers up pretty good? You know, you could be physical back then.
I know it was the third. It was the maybe for some of you guys who are watching will remember some of those details. It was a 31-29 home victory your freshman year. Is that game, does it ring a bell other than the 3 interceptions?
But other than that, I don't remember much.
I got you.
I got kind of fuzzy memory of most of my college days, you know. Mm-hmm.
Let's go off the field for a few minutes. In the late 70s and early 80s, it was a real transition for the African-American athlete at Vanderbilt. And I've had many guys on here who've talked about, from a cultural standpoint, the influence of Fisk, Tennessee State, the other schools all around town, and how you were able to bond with those athletes and the students over there, not just at their school, but also on our campus. I know that the Black Cultural Center was, and I don't remember what it was called at the time, but it was slowly becoming more of a real place to go for the African-American athletes and others as well. And I'm sorry for such a long-winded intro, but my question is, from a student perspective, was there ever any issues for you or the teammates or your buddies from a cultural standpoint, being a student athlete at Vanderbilt?
But most of my time was spent on Vanderbilt campus. I didn't spend too much time off campus. So we were kind of sheltered, but I dated someone from Fisk, and I dated someone from Tennessee State. So I didn't see a lot of what was really going on with Black, white, or the race issue in Nashville. Because I was so sheltered at Vanderbilt. I'm a person, I'm not going to go many places because these guys, they can probably tell you I was half the time, either in the dorm or across the street at the sub place or Jones is one of those places. Didn't get out much.
I was going to ask you about the sub place in Jonesy's. Were those two of the hangouts for the guys on the team?
Absolutely, absolutely. Sub and a pitcher for like $3.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, you were really sheltered. Many of us are during our experience, because the team really is kind of your family. If you look at it that way, they're your fraternity brothers, if you want to put it in that perspective.
All of that, and more.
But, you're spending 80-90% of your existence with these guys. Who are some of your running around buddies back in the day, whether they were on the team or other sports or just regular students?
Most of my run around guys were on the team. Jim Arnold, Whit, Norm, and those guys. Tim Brown. It was just a bunch. To be just Tom Moore. I haven't seen Tom in years. There's probably core about 10 to 12 of us.
Mm-hmm. Well, I bet practices must have been interesting with whipping it around everywhere and you guys defending it. I bet those were some good practices.
I guess I love practice more than I like the game. So you got to go out and experiment with practice. If you blew a coverage, it didn't count. Go do it again. So I used to love practice. Didn't like the weight room, but I love practice.
Well, you got the likes of Norman Jordan and Keith Edwards and all of those, Preston Brown, all those just so accomplished players. Were the practices harder than games or not necessarily?
Some practices were. Practice is a whole lot more physical because you got to hit. I've had games when, like, say, Ole Miss, Alabama, they're going to run 90 plays and probably 90% of them are running plays. So if I've got a receiver, we just run up and down the field all day. I remember Coach Matt got on me one game. We were playing Ole Miss. And one of the receivers, they threw like 2 passes all game. So we started, hey man, where you from? We started talking about families and stuff. Just, don't talk to him. Like, he's not catching any passes, so we're okay. But I wasn't a talker.
Well, there are those leaders who lead by example. There are those leaders who lead by talking. And it's the rare leader, I think, that who does both. And I've always heard that you were the leader by example, by what you did on the field and the way you carried yourself off the field. Was some of that influenced by the way your grandparents raised you, or is there some other influences in life that really kind of set that tone?
My grandfather, silence was golden. Just go work. Put your head down and just work and let your work speak for itself.
But what about those occasions, Leonard, where you had to step outside of that comfort zone, is what my term, I'm calling it that, when you really had to be vocal? Did you was that a struggle, or were you able to find those words, that courage to be able to say what you needed to say in that moment? For example, in the huddle, on the sidelines, when somebody's jacking around and you don't like it, how did you deal with stuff like that?
Just talk to them. Don't raise your voice. Just talk to them. Mm-hmm. Everybody deserves to be heard, and maybe there's a reason why that. But no, I didn't talk much. Me and the guys close. Hey, let's look at this, look at that. Just don't do that. But no, I was never been a talker, even with my kids to the day, my grandkids.
So what I'm hearing is what you're saying is Ken Hammond spoke for enough of you guys There was enough
Those
out
guys,
there.
those guys took care of everything. I could just show up and not have to worry about anything, just get dressed and go to work. They took everything. And that's one of the reasons why that year we went to the bowl game, we weren't successful the next year because those guys were gone. Norm, Whit, those guys, our leaders were gone. And I'm not a guy that's going to be very vocal, so I'm not going to step out of my element. I'm just going to do what I'm supposed to do.
Well, I want to take you briefly to that 82 season. And you guys, at the second half of the year, you reeled off consecutive wins. Ole Miss, Kentucky, Virginia Tech, Chattanooga, and you beat Tennessee before the bowl game. That's one of the most successful 6-game run in Vanderbilt in the last 50 years or more. When you guys learned that you were going to a bowl game, do you remember this time period and how exciting it was for the team?
Very exciting. Kind of pissed we didn't go to Orlando because it's 3 hours from the house, but it was exciting. I remember Alama Matthews. Alama was down in Miami the week before the game. So Alama and one of our other players who drove to Birmingham for the game. That was probably the highlight of my career, college or pro, high school. That was the highlight. Just being with those guys, just knowing that how hard those guys work. Some of those guys have been there for 5 years, and it was their time to shine. I mean, it's magical.
It was a magical season. Coach Mack had you guys, you ended up being 8-4, but I think as you said, then your final season of 83, a lot of the nucleus of that team's success, they were now in the pros or on to the next phase of their lives. And you guys kind of crashed back down to a 2-9 season.
Yes, we did. We could have kept us around. I think we could have been 9-2, but they were gone.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's part of the good and the bad of college ball. It's a new team every year. But Leonard, toward the end of that year, I don't want to assume anything. At what point, maybe in 82 or 83, your junior, senior years, it's starting to percolate in your mind, I think I'm going to get myself ready for the NFL. And maybe it was not an ongoing conversation, or maybe it was a continual one. But most of us who've been on this show never get that experience, that unique experience that you were able to achieve. So if you could share a little bit of that, I'd be very grateful to learn that process or some of those things you went through.
Just trying to think.
Yeah.
Just coming into the year, because I wasn't in Nashville that summer, and coming in, and I think Sporting News had me, rated the #1 DB coming back into that year, and it was kind of crazy. Just agents just showing up at your house, just offering money, all kind of stuff. I'm like, can you guys
in
just
Boynton or in Nashville?
In Boynton, even in Nashville, when I got back into school, guys offering cars and all kind of stuff. I'm like, you just leave me alone. Let me go out with these guys and just have a good time. I'm in college.
How did those conversations with your grandparents take place? I mean, I assume this was all part of the conversation.
Right. Same thing, Granddaddy. I've raised you. You've never been in trouble. You've always made good decisions. So this is your decision. You've got to live that life. I don't know. This thing, I'm not sure how long I'm going to be around. So you need to be prepared for this.
Well, Leonard, I'm assuming you were about 21, 22, maybe 23. That's a pretty heady decision to be placed on a single person. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying you were alone in your decision making, right. But he really put a lot of responsibility on you right there, didn't he?
It wasn't too bad, I don't think, because my thing is I'm going to get back up here to Nashville and play on football and hopefully not get hurt and hang out with my buddies. That's it.
Yeah, but you weren't a 6th round projected draft pick. You weren't a free agent draft pick. You were the #1 returning DB in the country and a projected top 10 pick, which ultimately you were at number 8. That, we're not talking about going across the street and ordering a pitcher and beer and just having a quick conversation. These are some real decisions you're making. I mean, it didn't, I guess maybe it didn't stress you out as much as it may be the average guy.
No, I don't believe it's stress. Just, pressure busts a pipe. Just, you gotta just let it flow.
Well, you need to bottle up and start selling whatever it is that you've got there, because many folks need that.
When I got here, I've got two granddaughters that I've actually got three. One I haven't seen in a while, but I've got two, and they keep me grounded. Believe me, those ladies keep me grounded.
Oh, I bet.
They're
Oh,
on cruise right now. Otherwise, they would be right in here listening and probably talking more than me. Those are my little ladies.
well, if they come around, they're certainly welcome to join in the conversation.
They'll be in Nashville a couple times this year for football.
Well, good. We got Robin Giltner has joined the conversation. Hey, Robin, thank you, bud. Leonard, you take us to the draft. We know that ultimately you did not sign with the Colts coming out, and you don't have to rehash that part, but the decision of jumping to the USFL was unique in 83, 84, 85 time period because of the competing league. Mm-hmm. And was it a tough decision for you to decide, or I guess, was it a contract issue that ultimately led you to not sign with the Colts?
It wasn't really my decision. What the Colts offered, they offered me less than another first round pick in the draft. I think he was drafted maybe 26, 27. He got paid more than they offered me. And I'm like, can't take it. And I know Jim was the GM back then, but he really wasn't a GM. His dad was the right stuff. And Jim offered me a good contract. I was going to sign it, but then Dad got involved and said, no, we're not going to pay you that. It was a non-brand. And going into the draft, I was hoping to get drafted later by a good team. When you go early, some of these bad teams, you don't get a chance to sit back and really learn from veterans. I get to Vanderbilt. We got Ken and we got those guys. Alabama, we got all those guys. They're all ready. So I go to a team that really wasn't that good. We had a lot of young talent, but you need some veterans around. Try to keep everything together. Because, back then, the coaches thought they were running stuff, but really the veterans were in charge if you want a team with some good veterans. I was hoping, maybe Steelers or somebody late in the draft, but that's really what I was hoping. We just weren't very good back then at the Colts.
And when you're referring to Jim, you're talking about Jim Irsay, the son.
Yeah.
Back
I got utmost respect for Jim. I got utmost respect for Jim.
Well, you make the jump to the Memphis Showboats for the season. Did you?
Best year of my life. The best year of my life. Yes.
And why is that?
Pepper Rogers. Pepper, and he wanted to play the game the way it's supposed to. Go out and have fun. If you screw up, have fun, just F it, next play. And he was like that, all the time. We had some guys that really, really screwed up, and he would talk to them, look, you've done that. Just don't do it again. Let's work forward, not back. Best year of my life. Did
you know that about Coach Rogers before you went to Memphis?
I didn't have no idea who Coach Rogers was, but I left there knowing a really good man. Really good man.
That was a welcome surprise for you and probably a bunch of other first-year players. Were there any other Vanderbilt or SEC guys who you knew with Memphis that year?
What's his name? Van Helton was on the team for a little while. I think Preston might have been down there too. But you were so busy. I had a wife and a son then, so I just spent a lot of time with my teammates. It was a good year. Memphis was different back then. It's kind of crazy now. Too big, but great year. Great year.
You spend that 1 year with Memphis and then you come back to the Colts. Was it because they got smart and decided to pay you your worth? Or was there something else at play that led you back to the NFL?
USFL was getting ready to shut down.
Mm-hmm.
Ready to shut down. And I was hoping that they would trade it, but they didn't. It's just, you look at stuff, and I'm going to say this. Teams that lose in the NFL aren't as structured as the teams that are good. I know talking to guys like play with the 49ers, a good team, they go out there and practice an hour and a half. They're done. Coach, we practice 3 hours in the afternoon. And in the morning, our walkthroughs, some walkthroughs end up being 7-on-7 all out. So You compete for about a half of a football game, second half, your legs are going. You had 47 guys on the roster. And just kind of wish they could have meshed the good and the bad.
Well, I know from reading the back of your football card, you played with the Colts in 85 and ultimately to the Chargers and retired after the 89 season. And the one thing about athletes on any level, at some point you have to make a decision that your playing days are coming to an end. And for some guys, that's depressing. It's hard. It's very hard decision. You don't want to give up a sport you've been really part of your life since childhood. Where were you in your decision making when it came toward the end of the 89 season?
I guess when I was drafted, I said, I'm probably going to get 4 or 5 years in the most out of this. And I got 5 years of pro ball, 4 in NFL. And my grandfather had passed, and it's like, hey, it's time for something else right now. So let's spend some time with the family. The marriage wasn't going too good. I was trying to save that. That didn't work. So you have to just move on. You can't take it with you.
Mm-hmm. You retired after the 89 season. What's kept you busy over the years besides your grandchildren?
My grandkids and working with other people's kids. I did 25 years of school district in Palm Beach County as a dean down in Palm Beach County. And it kept me busy. Matter of fact, they're trying to get me busy now. I've got some parents, they're going to send their kids to live with me. I don't think so. I've got these grandgirls to worry about. Can't be raising other people's kids right now.
Well, that's a real tribute to you and the character who you are, and that folks think that highly of you. Leonard, we're getting close toward the end of our conversation, but I want to back up. I want you to share a little insight about what made you most proud of going to school at Vanderbilt and playing for the Black and Gold.
Well, I'm going to say this. A couple years ago, I wasn't too proud because I went up after I got married the second time, and they were kind of redoing the Guggen Center, and there wasn't one picture on the wall of anybody from 80 to 84, 85 my time. No picture of Ken Hammond, Witt, none of those guys, and I just didn't feel like it was, we were wanted back there. But I went up Hall of Fame thing back, I'm going to say in February, and the new coach, you feel totally different. You feel like he wants you part of this.
Were you there for the weekend where they invited the Pioneers?
No, I didn't know about that, but I kind of decided because I'm 5 hours away from Nashville by car.
You're too young. Maybe you're too young.
No, but Wayman and those guys were there, so I would have liked to have been there to support them. When you're teammates, your brothers for life. Your brothers for life.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Wayman was on recently and had a great conversation with him, and I know that you're still close with Wayman and some of those guys. And I love what Coach Lee has done by welcoming back any and all former players, because he'll be the first to tell you this is your house, meaning McGugin. This is the house that we all have built brick by brick. Whether you were an All-America, all drafted number 8 in the first round, or you were the scrub who cleaned up. I love that Coach Lee is building that environment for everybody. So that, I guess he helped to repair some of those thoughts you had from previous times.
Absolutely. Once Coach Mack left and Coach Brown, that was pretty much it as far as I'm concerned. I've been up there a couple of times, but you didn't feel like you were wanted. You're not wanted. You don't go around. But I'm wishing them the best of luck, and I'm hoping that he can get them back on top, keep them on top.
Well, we all certainly do for that. And I'm not going to let you out of here without Leonard. I from not knowing you or meeting you until tonight, I certainly knew of your career and have heard many very positive things about you, even from Hammond, even from Wayman. I keep going back in my mind about leadership, and I'm not trying to make you uncomfortable about dealing with this. I'm not trying to just blow smoke. You've expressed to us tonight that it's by your actions that hopefully people will see what you do, and pulling people aside, not embarrassing them, but just letting them know as a leader, this is what you see. This is what I guess what I'm trying to say to you or ask of you the modern athlete is not the athlete from our generation.
No.
It's a complete, and you've been around kids in the education system for years, and you've seen all these changes. And clearly, we didn't have any of this to worry about back in the day. Here's my question to you. And again, I apologize for the long lead in. If you're coaching these kids in junior high and in high school, how are you getting them, not physically, but mentally prepared for the college game and even that rare kid who gets to play in the next level professionally? How do you get them mentally prepared?
Well, right now, that one's kind of hard because kid can go to Vanderbilt today, and next week change his mind, and he's off to another school. And it's nice that they have those choices, but something's got to be changed. It's just, I don't know if they're ever going to be tough like we were years ago. Some of the stuff that we went through, they just don't know if they can handle it. So I would just say, just try to keep them as grounded as possible, and definitely communicate with the parents. The younger they are, you need to keep the parents involved, as long as you're on the same wavelength. But if you're not, it's tough, because every parent thinks their kid is the best thing since sliced bread. Some of them are, because it's the best that they have. So I would just say is coach them the best you can, treat them with respect, and just definitely keep parents involved as much as you can.
Well, Leonard, I think Kenny Cole just summed it up quite properly. It's a quiet confidence that you portray. And I mean that, and I know Kenny means that with the ultimate of compliment to you. I think more people in the world should have that quiet confidence. And Leonard, you epitomize what it means to play for the black and gold. And I don't just mean the fact that you went on to the pros and played and stuff. I mean, even more importantly, what you did ever since. So thank you for joining me on Conversation.
Thank you for inviting me.
Well, I certainly hope that we get to see you on campus at the game sometime.
I'll be up at least 3 times this year, at least.
Oh, that's music to my ears. That guys, one of the very best to ever put it on black and gold. Leonard Coleman has joined us tonight on Conversations with Commodores. You guys keep coming back Tuesday nights.
Okay, I'll be watching next Tuesday.
Leonard, hold on, don't hang up.
Okay.